The Battle of the Delaware Capes, or the Third Battle of Delaware Bay, was a naval engagement that was fought off the Delaware River towards the end of the American Revolutionary War. The battle took place on the 20th and the 21st of December 1782, some 3 weeks after the signing of the preliminary Articles of Peace between Great Britain and the former American colonies, and was an engagement between 3 British Royal Navy frigates, HMS Diomede, Quebec and Astraea on the one side, and the South Carolina Navy's 40-gun frigate South Carolina, the brigs Hope and Constance, and the schooner Seagrove on the other. The British were victorious, with only Seagrove escaping capture. Background: the inactivity of the British, American and French armies meant that the Royal Navy was free to concentrate on enemy trade. One group of British frigates, HMS Diomede under Captain Thomas Frederick, and the sister 32-gun frigates, HMS Quebec under Captain Christopher Mason, and HMS Astraea under Captain Matthew Squires, was blockading the Delaware Bay. On the 20th of December 1782 they spotted a number of vessels coming out of the bay and chased after them. Frederick was told by the officer of watch that one of the vessels was a large frigate. This was the 40-gun South Carolina. South Carolina, under Captain John Joyner, was built at Amsterdam in 1780. She originally was named Indian and belonged to France, but the Americans hired her. The ship was the most heavily armed warship to sail under American colors during the Revolution. Joyner was attempting to dash out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, through the British blockade on the 19th of December with several vessels, as well as the large South Carolina, the privateer brig Hope, commanded by John Prohl of 10 guns and carrying tobacco and flour, another privateer brig Constance, under Commander Jesse Harding, and the 6-gun schooner Seagrove, under Captain Benjamin Bradhurst, which had joined them for protection. On the 19th of December Seagrove hailed a merchant vessel entering the river. Her master learned that 3 large sail had been seen patrolling off the Cape May Channel. With this information, Joyner decided to proceed down the main channel and go straight out into the ocean. On the 20th of December, in the early evening, the 4 vessels sailed down the channel and out into the Atlantic. Battle. Between 2,200 and 2,230 hours the Americans sighted 3 large British warships. At about the same time the British sighted the Americans. 5 hours out in the cruise South Carolina and the Hope turned south, and 2 of the British frigates turned after them. Seagrove turned north, with Diomede in pursuit. She got close enough to fire a few shots, but the schooner sent out boats and towed into the wind. Eventually Diomede turned south to continue the main pursuit, letting Seagrove get away. Whilst Diomede was chasing Seagrove, Constance, having never strayed from her course, had continued east and surrendered to Quebec and Astraea without pointless resistance. The British pursuit of South Carolina then continued through the night. At sunrise the nearest British ship was about 2.5 miles behind South Carolina. Hope passed South Carolina at least once during the pursuit, even though Hope was slower before the wind. Joyner suggested that Prohl tow Hope around the British and make the pursuit into a rowing match, but Prohl rejected the advice. By 1,300 hours the British took Hope under fire and she surrendered after having nearly collided with one of the British frigates. This just now left South Carolina, which was only a mile in front of the British ships once Hope had surrendered. The pursuers skillfully took up position to limit South Carolina's options in trying to get away. The British windward ship attempted to mask the South Carolina's wind. For 18 hours the British chased South Carolina. When she came in range, she fired her stern chasers at Diomede, which returned fire from her bow guns. By 1,500 hours the British ships were close enough to exchange shots and could each fire a broadside and return to the chase while preventing South Carolina from doing the same. The first of the British broadsides did major damage to South Carolina, leading Joyner to call his officers together to discuss whether to fight or to continue the flight. The decision was to continue the latter. By 1,700 hours, Quebec and Diomede came up alongside South Carolina, with a street behind in support, together with Hope and Constance. The British were soon in position to fire 6 broadsides, 5 from the Diomede and the other from the Quebec, all aimed at South Carolina's masts, sails and rigging, which within 2 hours were in tatters. Joyner, now seeing the hopelessness of South Carolina's situation, decided to fire her guns one last time. Not wishing to surrender with his cannons loaded, he then struck, ending the battle. The British took possession of South Carolina and transferred their prisoners over to the British ships. Aftermath. The British had suffered no casualties, and damage to their 3 frigates was light, most damage being to masts and rigging. South Carolina had a crew of about 466 men when captured, of whom she had lost 6 killed and 8 wounded. Hope had 42 crewmen. Constance, with another 30 men, brought the total number of American prisoners to nearly 530. 50 German and 8 British prisoners that the Americans had recruited out of captivity in Philadelphia were released, as they had once served as soldiers in General John Burgoyne's army. Because of the number of men involved, the British treated their American prisoners strictly, locking them under hatches, not allowing more than 2 to come up on deck at the same time. Prize crews then took South Carolina, Hope, and Constance to New York, where all 3 vessels were tried and condemned. The Royal Navy did not purchase South Carolina. The war was ending, and with it the need for a large navy, and South Carolina's design had flaws. Instead, she was sold for service as a merchantman. Prize money for the captured vessels was awarded in 1784. Order of Battle. Continental Navy, South Carolina Navy, South Carolina, frigate, flagship, Hope, brig, Constance, brig, Seagrove, schooner, Royal Navy, HMS Diomede, frigate, flagship, HMS Quebec, frigate, HMS Astraea, frigate,